Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Richard Morgan and I'm the Operations Director here at Nimbus 90 and also the founder of our Defence sub-community. For those of you joining us this morning for the first time, Nimbus 90 is the community for disruptive business and technology leaders. Our community includes tech experts, CIOs, CTOs, CDOs, as well as generalists who have a responsibility for, or sometimes just a professional curiosity about, the opportunities presented by innovation and technology. We deliver a range of activities from summits, masterclasses, topic-focused business briefings, working breakfasts and dinners and virtual events. But our strength is our diversity and our depth, with our membership coming from the full range of sectors and industries and job titles. Our member-driven activities enable the sharing of experiences and perspectives across sectors and the forging of relationships with peers. Our Defence sub-community is our newest sub-community, for which we are providing activities to enable our Defence members to network with and hear from thought leaders and peers, both inside and outside Defence. So thank you for joining us here this morning for this webinar on Programme THEIA, the British Army's Digital Transformation Programme. Joining us this morning, we have Brigadier Stephen Crossfield, the British Army's Head of Information Exploitation, Chief Data Officer, and Director of the Army's Digital Transformation Programme, Programme THEIA. He's extremely well qualified for this latter role, with previous experience, including being part of the Army's Force Development Team, which designed Army 2020, and as a holder of a master's degree in information systems. And also, not to be outshone by the Brigadier's extremely lengthy job title, we have Kelly Wilson, Head of Information Technology Services, Business Strategy and Finance at the Scottish Government, where she is responsible for providing strategic oversight and planning their IT services, as well as workforce planning, financial and corporate management functions. Before we start, please can I highlight that pre-prepared remarks are on the record and are attributable to the individual and the event, but all comments made in response to questions, i.e. non-pre-prepared remarks or non-prepared remarks, are neither attributable to the individual nor the event. If you do have any questions during the session, please type them into the Q&A function, which will be at the bottom of your screens. And so now I have great pleasure in handing over to Brigadier Stephen Crossfield.
So Richard, thanks very much. I do apologise for the name of the programme. I didn't choose it. So THEIA is the correct pronunciation, but we won't dwell on that. I think today is a great opportunity to continue telling the story of THEIA and what the Army is seeking to achieve. I'd ask Alexa to put up the next slide if she could, which is the rich picture. And I'm just going to speak for a few moments about how we've built the programme and how it operates within the Army. And then I'm going to switch over just to give you an insight into a recent piece of work, which was to identify the priorities for the next 9 to 12 months, work that the Deputy Chief of General Staff, Lieutenant General Chris Tickell, asked us to do so that we can begin to actually start delivering against this programme some tangible outcomes as we begin to really bed it in. I mean, THEIA has been around since about this time last year, probably September last year, actually, so a bit less, a bit longer than that. It was initiated by my predecessor. It was first announced post the integrated review being announced in the spring of this year, but had been in gestation for quite a long period before that. It's a federated programme, so you can see the large red hand pressing on the THEIA button. The idea of this is that we don't centrally control digital transformation. We believe that it's everybody's business in the British Army to get after moving from being what is effectively an industrial age army at the moment to begin to fight in the information age and therefore become an information age army. Above the hand, you can see a whole raft of reasons why that's important. You know, we're in a fourth industrial revolution. There are huge technology opportunities. The world is really complex. Hybrid conflict expands across multi-domains, and therefore you can't operate just in the land domain. So we need to be connected to our sister services and to other agencies. We are really poorly cultured at the moment as an organisation. We silo data, we silo our systems, and therefore they don't share with each other. And of course, data doesn't respect those boundaries. It can flow across them, but we've built a brownfield site where that isn't possible. Why are we doing THEIA? Well, in the centre of the screen at the top, you'll see 3 red text outcomes. The first one is, as you would expect for any army, to outcompete our adversaries. The quicker we can make decisions on the best possible data, the better they will be, and the more likely we are to win. The second reason is to improve our efficiencies. Clearly, we're a state department, we're spending taxpayers' money, and the more efficient we can become, the better. And of course, we can do more with what we've got. And then lastly is to integrate with our partners. THEIA has been absolutely clear from the start that we need to show a degree of humility here. It's impossible to do this on our own. We need to integrate both with our international partners, principally the US, the French, the Germans, and the Dutch. But we also need to integrate more broadly with industry, both SMEs and larger companies, to help us drive our digital transformation. And it's an all-armed sport as well. So we're not doing this just as the military, we're doing it with our civil servants. A couple of other things that link into those 3 outcomes that are worth bringing out. Firstly, this is really emergent and agile. I touched on earlier, one of the pieces of work we've been wrangling with over the last month or so is let's put some pegs in the ground about what we're going to deliver. But it's so emergent, and we don't really know where we're going with it. And when you federate something, of course, you leave a degree of responsibility to others to deliver the outcomes, and THEIA is purely producing the coordination. The other thing I'd like to really emphasize is it's cultural. So ultimately, THEIA does not want to become transfixed by the technology and by the opportunity of technology. That is clearly important, but this is about changing the way we think, the way we operate, and moving to a situation where we turn to the data first, and we turn to modern systems to help us examine that data, draw insight before we then move forward. The outcomes on the right-hand side, I'd just really like to emphasize the multi-domain integration. So the delivery of a digital backbone, one of Defence's main aims, delivering multi-domain integration, recognizing that warfare in the future does not exist just in one domain, whether that be in the land, sea or air, or in space now. The fact that it's multi-domain, it's always multi-domain, is critical. And therefore, we're working really hard with Defence Digital to make sure that we keep that aim in sight all the way through. Just 1 minute on the way we're constructed. We're running a number of accelerators. These are effectively projects we can get after now that we know we're delivering against. I can dig into some of those if you want, but I'm not going to dwell on them now. Those accelerators sort of show opportunity to the wider army. They are exemplars of what you can do, and then they give us some feel for where we might take it further. We'll continue to cycle through those though, and we hope to graduate one this month around skills, and then move on to bringing some new stuff in. We've got a number of enablers, which are the sort of macro problems that we need to get after. The first one, skills and culture. I often think about this rich picture. It's the smaller of the circles. I'm not quite sure why. It probably should take up most of the space there. Skills and culture is a massive enabler to this. And that's just the first one on that row. And again, I won't dig into all of those, but you can imagine there's a whole load of enablers that we need to look after centrally rather than federating responsibility for them. And then lastly, catalysts. The 3 at the front there are the catalysts we're looking at now, the technologies we're focusing on. So advanced analytics, AI/ML, and when it says digital sustainability, it's the digital contribution to becoming a more sustainable organization, to hit net zero and to become more circular in our approach. That the digital contribution to that is absolutely the bedrock of understanding what the situation is now. So 3 catalysts for now, but as you can see running across the slide, just the last but one, synthetics, is enormous. And I think that's probably something we need to start thinking about now. So we're slowly building on our catalysts as we get the capacity to do so. Okay, turning slightly now just to the priorities that I touched on earlier. The key things for us that we're going to do in the next 6 to 9 months, well, sorry, 9 to 12 months, my apologies. Firstly, strategy. Defence Digital has been working really hard to develop an awful lot of strategy that's centralist, that allows us to become MDI in the future, to multi-domain. We now need to take that, do our receipt of orders, if you will, construct and examine that strategy and decide how that applies back into the army. This is a real challenge. The army is funded to deliver its outputs. Defence Digital has some resource, but not much. They're not holding the resource centrally to deliver digital outcomes. And therefore, the balancing between the Army's wider outcomes and challenges that are placed on it and those digital outcomes is going to be quite tricky. So we're going back to the board, having refreshed the Army's strategy for digital transformation later this year, we hope. Second highest priority for me is the transition to cloud. We run a predominantly on-prem service at the moment. It is really good. The Army hosting environment, the Army data warehouse are used not just by the Army, they're used by Defence more broadly, by our sister services and many others. But we need to get to cloud. So at the moment, we're working hard to look at some of our legacy systems that we know we will have to move because they become unsupported. But we're also working with Microsoft and other partners on opportunities to move .NET, for example, as quickly as possible to cloud. And we're working with Defence Digital on that. We're very grateful for the support they provided through a tasking note. Our third highest priority is to understand how we fund THEIA. So we've started off with a federated approach. I think we're beginning to realise that some of the discovery activity probably needs to be more centrally funded. We need to hold the capacity to pick and choose what discoveries we conduct and when, and identify those where they have broader utility than just the area that are presenting the business problem. That has already come to pass with a number of functional leaders coming with problems, and we very quickly realised that the problem is common to many functional leaders, and therefore we really should be going after that first rather than the more specific and very narrow problems that they will have. So funding is our next and highest priority. How do we take that into the annual budgetary cycle 22? What funding do we have in 22-23 that we hold centrally in THEIA so that we can drive this transformation? And what will remain federated, as I touched on earlier. My fourth highest priority is exploitation of analytics. It was one of my catalysts earlier. We have THEIA now as a live system running. We are predominantly nested in level maybe 2, discussing 3 analytics, lots of visualizations, some really good stuff, great dashboards, but we really need to get after the application of AI and machine learning to our data so we can begin to draw out some of those insights that we know are possible. That is a priority for us. My last but one priority is looking at strategic MIS. So at the moment I touched on the stovepipes earlier. We have a number of information systems which are drawing closer together as we speak. And there is almost certainly a requirement for us to look at that strategically and deliver a single management information system for the whole of the Army headquarters to start with, but more broadly working with Field Army and their challenges and Home Command and their challenges as the 2 big 3-star commands. Lastly, information architecture. So lastly doesn't seem right in many ways. It's probably the underpinnings of all of what I've just said. But for me, the challenge of information architecture is already well underway. We have a chief information architect now. We have an information design authority that is nested under an initial operating capability Army design authority. And there are other design authorities standing up now so that we can work in concert with each other. But how much of that problem can the Army deliver itself? How much of that information architecture can we do ourselves? How much can be done by programs? How much we will need to put out to industry to help us with is the question that we need to answer by the end of this year. Because we all know, I think everybody knows the challenge is enormous, but no one has yet got their arms around exactly how big that challenge is, so we can then begin to plan how we address it. So, THEIA in 3 or 4 minutes, challenges in 2 or 3 minutes. It's kind of where we are. It's quite exciting. I think we've got the backing of our CGS, who wants us to move from an industrial age force to an information age army. We've got an amazing digital champion in the DCGS and General Chris, who is absolutely driving this. We meet every quarter as Exco Digital with the board committed to delivering our digital transformation. But clearly we've got challenges ahead and we're excited to address them. Richard, that is I'm done. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll hand straight over to Kelly, please.
Many thanks, Richard, and that was actually incredibly interesting to listen to that rather whistle-stop tour summary, Brigadier Stephen, so thank you and good morning everybody. I'll apologise now if anybody hears any barking. My dogs have decided, in the true sense of homeworking, to act up, so apologies all. One thing I was reflecting on listening to Brigadier Stephen was the commonalities between the digital transformation programmes the Scottish Government ICT department are leading on at the moment. And I'm actually wondering whether or not it is symptomatic of being public funded as well. So a lot of the challenges we are seeing as well are around culture. It's around securing the investment and trying to put across that high level upfront investment requirements needed for the long-term gains when we are bidding in a pool responsible for funding education, health, justice. It's quite a monumental challenge for us to do, but trying to, well, by securing those areas buy-in to our programmes, we are able then to get power to our elbow, to go to our senior managers and get the investment we need. We are the enablers of our organisation. We're not always on the forefront of the doing, but we are certainly there to enable. And I really liked your point about not centrally controlling the digital transformation. It has to be led by business areas, as I would class them. Other departments need to be taking their own responsibility. What we want to be is a sort of high expertise with that low control setup. The other thing that resonated entirely with me is not focusing on the technical solutions, setting out the requirements, helping people scope that out, helping people understand what it is they need, but not jumping straight to a technical solution, which is something we're often finding is quite a significant challenge in delivering some of our transformation. So we set out, we've gone out to market, we've assessed what the tools are, what the requirements are, and then we have somebody quite senior comes along and says they want a specific solution technology that actually doesn't fulfill the requirements. And we then get into that some of the political aspects, as you would imagine, Scottish Government comes with, into why that we need to sit down, handhold and explain that it's not there. I think it's singly our biggest challenge for a long time had been that culture, getting users digitally aware, getting them digitally skilled to be able to make maximum effort of the tools that we're supplying to them. The one thing I've been reflecting on in the last 2 years is the impact of COVID didn't have a negative impact within our sphere. It had quite a positive. People were mandated to use tools. They had to learn the skills to be able to operate from home and work and continue their job. So there's been an unintended benefit has come from COVID. I think from a strategic point of view, only when I say this, certainly not from a health perspective by any stretch, it has been more opportunity generating for us than it has been having any sort of negative consequences, in that it's furthered our digital transformation. The one thing I would say as well, we didn't change our plans as a result of impact of COVID. Our strategies, which we are fully aligned to, and another thing I would absolutely champion is that coherence with your high level strategies. And it's great to hear you say that, Brigadier Stefan, because no surprises with somebody who's got business strategy in their job title. It's something I'm very passionate about in ensuring that there's alignment across all levels. So there's a digital strategy for Scotland, and that's what the Scottish Government's ambition is for the people of Scotland. And when you start looking a little bit more at my department, when we're focused on enabling those colleagues of ours to deliver for the people of Scotland, it might not seem like a really nice straight link, but there really is. And if anybody's not read our digital strategy for Scotland, it's worth a read. It's our most ambitious programme yet. It sounds like what our army colleagues are setting out to do is incredibly ambitious. And one thing I would also highlight, the pace of technology, in my experience, is moving so fast, it's getting quicker. We're making greater use of a wider range of tools and technologies out there, engaging and collaborating with more people and suppliers than ever before. But the culture's got to move at the same pace of that technology. The skills have got to be developed at that same pace of technology. And the funding has to come with that pace of technology if you want to stay current, if you want to stay as up to date as you possibly can. And balancing many different priorities is an art form in itself. I once told a colleague, I'm going to become a cat herder when I finish my current role, because that's what I feel like I do a lot of the time, constantly grabbing at the strings to keep people all together, to keep things aligned, to keep things moving on, to ensure plans are properly considered and set out, but being able to be flexible enough on the flip side of it to move at pace. And often big transformation programs, you don't associate them with moving at pace necessarily, but they have to now, which again, that's another part of the culture change. And it's certainly something I've been pushing for with my senior level colleagues, is that by the time we sometimes secure our funding, the technology's moved on and our business case at that point in time was out of date already. What we wanted to pursue or what else came onto the market far outdone what we had originally set out to do. So we're learning to make more smaller incremental changes, aligning to that large strategic ambition and objectives in a way that's much more palatable to people, we're finding. That then gets the culture change we need. That's then getting us the funding we need, because it's not as big a scary a leap. It's just one small step forward. So yeah, we do have an awful lot of commonality between us, and there was certainly some food for thought there and some of your priorities, the exploitation of analytics. It's on our to-do list. We're not there yet. We're focusing on our transition to cloud. Like yourself, information architecture is a massive, massive thing for us, as well as getting rid of our legacy systems, replacing them with current, with modern. I think the opportunities that come with the on-cloud move give us more flexibility than ever before when we're no longer on-prem and actually moving forward. We're hoping that we can really embody and become exemplars of just enabling, rather than that control that we seem to have had for about the last 10 to 15 years within the digital sphere within my organisation. We want to give people what it is they seek, and often it is instant access to whatever it is they want, but in a secure, part-controlled way. Because we are Scottish Government, we are targets of cyber threats. Security is a massive, massive priority for us, and somewhere we are investing heavily in at the moment within our cyber security, but I wouldn't expect any other government department to be any different to ourselves. And if I'm honest, any large commercial private business, I would be incredibly surprised if they're not at the forefront and have similar priorities themselves. So I think that's it for myself. Thank you. I'm aware I talk incredibly quickly.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kelly.